I was tired. Not of him, of begging the middle of the bed to be a country again, of pretending my loneliness was patience. I think I need space, I said. The moment I said it, a piece of my life unhooked and drifted a little. It didn't crash. It drifted. He closed his eyes, then opened them. Okay, he said. He didn't argue, and somehow that made it worse and better at the same time. I'm not punishing you, I said. I just don't know how to find myself in the dark when the light keeps pointing at us. I need to hear my own voice without listening for your breath. He nodded again, gripping the counter. I'll help you pack a bag, he said, and that undid me. His kindness, a small, steady boat in a flood I didn't know how to navigate. I left for my sister's that afternoon with 2 bags: clothes, a toothbrush, the book I'd been meaning to finish, a sweater that smelled like our couch. When I closed our front door behind me, I held the knob for a second and pressed my forehead to the wood, a child's posture, a prayer that had no words except please and let and be. The first night away, I didn't sleep. The guest room felt like a room that had borrowed my life and hadn't decided whether to return it. I listened to the traffic and watched the windows square on the wall travel as the streetlight blinked. My sister texted from the next room, "Are you okay?" And I wrote back, "Not yet," and that was the truest thing I'd said all year. Days passed, and with them the constant ache thinned into a steady soreness, like a bruise that proves you're healing even when you're not paying attention. I walked alone after dinner. I noticed things I'd stopped seeing: the jacaranda spilling purple on the sidewalks, how the air smelled different after it rained, the way laughter from a bar carries like a warm shawl down an evening street. I let all of it enter me without asking what it meant for us. He called sometimes, not to convince me to come back, but to say good morning, or tell me he'd seen a hawk on the overpass and thought of me because I always pointed out birds. We talked like people who respected the shape of each other's silence. I went to therapy. I said things out loud I had only ever confessed to the ceiling. I admitted that I had become fluent in tending, making tea, smoothing sheets, straightening frames on the wall because it let me avoid saying I was starving. I admitted that loneliness inside a marriage is a special kind of quiet that makes you doubt your own voice. My therapist didn't give me a map. She gave me a question: what does it feel like to choose yourself without making someone else the villain? I carried that around like a stone that warmed in my pocket. Weeks blurred into a season, and then the season turned. He texted that he'd started seeing someone, not a woman, a counselor. He said he'd deleted the sites. He said he missed me without laying it on my doorstep like a package I had to sign for. I believed him, and I also didn't, and I let both truths sit down beside me without asking them to agree. People expect a big moment, a reckoning, an afternoon, when the music swells, and a decision blooms, and the credits roll. My life didn't do that for me. Instead, I sat on a park bench I'd never noticed before and watched a man teach a child how to ride a bike. The kid wobbled and shouted, "Don't let go!" And the father said, I won't, and then he did, and the child didn't know it yet and kept pedaling. Something about that tiny betrayal, necessary and kind, cracked something open in me. Letting go is a form of love if you do it with your hands still out, ready to catch if you're needed. I went back to the house one afternoon when I knew he'd be at work. I walked through each room, touching the backs of chairs and the top edges of picture frames like a blind person learning a new space. In the bedroom, the middle of the bed looked like any other bed flat, unconvincing, ordinary. I sat down and waited for a sign, a voice, a sudden bright certainty. Nothing came. What came instead was a soft, reasonable quiet that felt like my own breath returning to me. I stood, opened the closet, and took the things that were mine because I loved them, not because they proved who we had been. I left the sweater that smelled like our couch. Some things belong to a version of you that deserves a proper goodbye. When he came home and saw my note on the table, he called. We met at the park. At the bench were people who are trying to do the right thing, sit when they can't figure out what the right thing is. The sky was a clean blue you don't notice unless you're starting over. I love you, he said first. It wasn't an argument. It was a weather report. I love you too, I said. It was true the way a stone is true available, weighty, uncomplicated. And I think we're done. He didn't flinch. His face changed shape, grief rearranging it like wind moves a field. I know, he said. Then he cried, the quiet kind of crying men do when they don't yet know how to do it loudly, and I cried too. And for a few minutes, we were two people who had tried as hard as we knew how and had finally learned something about mercy. We signed papers months later. It was not tragic, not the story I'd feared or the disaster I'd braced for. It was a careful dismantling, like taking down a tent at the end of summer. Shake out the sand, fold the corners, make sure you can carry it without hurting your back. We returned keys and divided books and argued only over the coffee maker because it had somehow become the symbol of something that would not split cleanly. He let me have it. I bought him a new one anyway. When people ask, I don't say he was a bad man or that I was a saint. I say we were two people who got lost in the house we built. I say I learned that desire needs tenderness like lungs need air, and that tenderness cannot live where secrecy feeds. I say there are kinds of touch that happen long before hands meet, and we had stopped offering those. By the time we tried, the bridge had rotted. We could have rebuilt it, maybe, but the life I am building now needed an honest foundation. And honesty, for me, looked like a door opening outward. Sometimes at night, I still turn onto my side and reach for the empty space and feel a brief flicker of that old panic. Then, I take my own hand and hold it until the feeling passes. I make tea. I sit by the window. I watch the streetlight blink and think of the child on the bike, pedaling furious, free for a moment before he knew he was free. I whisper to that past version of me, the one who lay awake and wondered if she was too much or too little. You were always enough. You were just in a room where that truth had nowhere to sit. I'm not healed like a miracle. I'm healing like a person. I wake up in a quiet apartment with a stubborn plant I keep forgetting to water and a calendar that has my name on all the days. I cook for myself and sometimes for friends. And sometimes I walk with no destination, just to feel my legs carry me. I'm learning to want again, want a day, want a book, want a body that is tired in the good way. Some evenings I take my cup outside and stand on the little stoop and listen to the city. It sounds like forgiveness, messy, continuous, louder than I expected, kind. 2 years without touch taught me the shape of my own edges. The day I left taught me the softness inside them. I thought endings had to be flames. Mine was a door, and a deep breath, and a promise I made to myself. The next love I give will not be a negotiation with my fear. And the next love I receive will not ask me to disappear to fit the frame. If I ever share a bed again, the middle will be a country I can step into without asking for permission. And if I don't, I have learned how to touch my own life and feel it touch back.